Picture this. You're enjoying a quiet Saturday morning when two men in what look like police uniforms bang on your door, demanding you remove your American flag because it violates HOA rules. But here's the twist that will blow your mind. These weren't real cops at all. They were hired actors, part of an elaborate scheme by our power-hungry HOA president to intimidate residents into submission. And when my wife, a decorated U.S. Marshal, flashed her federal badge, the whole charade came crashing down in the most spectacular way imaginable. What happened next will restore your faith in justice and prove that some people picked the wrong house to mess with. My name is David Mitchell, and I'm a 42-year-old software engineer living in Willowbrook Estates, a suburban neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona. My wife, Sarah, is a U.S. Marshal with 15 years of federal law enforcement experience. We moved to this gated community 3 years ago, thinking we'd found our slice of the American dream. The houses were beautiful, the streets were clean, and the HOA seemed reasonable enough during our initial walkthrough. How wrong we were. The trouble started with Margaret Thornfield, a 58-year-old retired real estate agent who had appointed herself as the eternal HOA president. Margaret was the kind of person who measured her neighbor's grass with a ruler and sent violation notices if it exceeded the approved length by half an inch. She had shoulder-length blonde hair that she kept in a perfect bob, always wore designer pantsuits, and carried herself with the authority of someone who believed running a homeowners association was equivalent to governing a small nation. Margaret had been HOA president for 8 consecutive years, running unopposed because frankly nobody else wanted the headache. But her reign of terror had escalated dramatically in recent months. She'd implemented new rules seemingly every week. No parking on the street after 8 p.m. No lawn decorations except during approved holiday periods. Mandatory beige or tan exterior paint colors only. And absolutely no flags except during the week of July 4th. The flag rule was what finally pushed me over the edge. I'm a veteran, having served 2 tours in Afghanistan with the Army Corps of Engineers. When I came home, displaying the American flag on my property wasn't just a decoration. It was a symbol of everything I'd fought to protect. So when Margaret's latest newsletter arrived with the new flag restriction, I ignored it completely. My flag stayed right where it belonged, flying proudly on the flagpole in my front yard. The first warning came via certified mail, a formal notice typed on HOA letterhead, informing me that my unauthorized permanent flag display violated Section 4.7 of the updated community guidelines. I was given 7 days to comply or face escalating enforcement actions. I crumpled up the letter and threw it in the trash. Sarah just shook her head and said, "You know she's not going to let this go, right?" I told her I didn't care. Some principles are worth fighting for. Margaret's next move was to show up at my door personally, clipboard in hand, wearing one of her signature beige pantsuits. She knocked with the aggressive confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her adult life. When I answered, she launched into a rehearsed speech about community standards and property values, punctuated by dramatic gestures toward my flag. "Mr. Mitchell," she said in her practiced authoritative tone, "I don't think you understand the gravity of this situation. Your refusal to comply is setting a dangerous precedent for the entire community. If we allow one resident to flagrantly disregard our guidelines, chaos will ensue." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Margaret, I served this country so that flag could fly freely. It's not coming down." Her face turned red, and I could see her jaw clench. She scribbled something furiously on her clipboard and stormed off without another word. I should have known then that she was planning something bigger. The harassment campaign began the following week. Margaret started documenting every minor infraction she could find on our property. Our mailbox was apparently 3 degrees off from perfectly perpendicular to the street. The small decorative rocks in our flower bed were allegedly the wrong shade of gray. Our recycling bin had been left out 15 minutes past the designated pickup time. Each violation came with a formal notice and an escalating fine structure. But Margaret's masterpiece was still to come. The fake police officers appeared on a Saturday morning in early October. Sarah had been called away on a federal case the night before, leaving me alone with our 2 kids, Emma and Jake, aged 8 and 10. I was making pancakes when I heard the aggressive knocking that would change everything. 2 men stood on my porch wearing what appeared to be official police uniforms. They had badges, utility belts with handcuffs and radios, and the kind of stern expressions you'd expect from law enforcement. The older one, a heavy-set white man in his 50s, stepped forward and flashed his badge. "Sir, I'm Officer Martinez with the Willowbrook Community Police Department. We've received complaints about your property being in violation of local ordinances. We need to discuss your non-compliance with community standards." My first instinct was confusion. I'd never heard of a Willowbrook Community Police Department, but some suburbs do have their own small forces. The second officer, a younger black man who looked uncomfortable, stood slightly behind his partner and kept checking his watch. Officer Martinez continued, "We've been authorized to issue citations for ordinance violations, and your flag display is creating a public disturbance. Several residents have filed complaints about your refusal to follow HOA guidelines." Something felt off. Real police officers don't typically get involved in HOA disputes unless there's been a crime committed. But these guys had badges and uniforms, and they seemed to know all about my ongoing battle with Margaret. I decided to play along and see where this was heading. "Officers, I appreciate you coming out, but I'm not aware of any city ordinances that prohibit flag displays. Could you show me the specific statute I'm allegedly violating?" The older officer's demeanor shifted slightly. He pulled out a small notebook and flipped through it, clearly buying time. "Sir, we don't need to get into the legal specifics right now. The important thing is that you cooperate with the community standards. Mrs. Thornfield has made it clear that your non-compliance is causing problems for other residents." And there it was, Margaret's name. Real police officers wouldn't be taking direction from the HOA president, and they certainly wouldn't phrase it that way. But I still wasn't completely sure what was happening. These uniforms looked authentic, and their patrol car parked in my driveway had all the right equipment and markings. "Look, officers, I'm a veteran, and I have every right to display the American flag on my own property. If you want to write me a citation, go ahead. But that flag isn't coming down." The younger officer, who had been silent up to this point, finally spoke up. "Sir, maybe we could work out some kind of compromise. Perhaps you could display the flag only on federal holidays, or during specific patriotic observances." His suggestion confirmed my growing suspicions. Real police officers don't negotiate HOA compliance issues, and they don't suggest compromises on constitutional rights. These guys were imposters, but I still needed proof before I could act. "You know what, officers? Let me call my wife. She's in law enforcement too, and I'd like her input on this situation." The older officer's face tightened. "Sir, that's really not necessary. This is a simple compliance issue that we can resolve right now." But I was already dialing Sarah's number. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear the background noise of whatever federal operation she was working. "David, what's wrong?" "I'm kind of in the middle of something here. Honey, I've got 2 police officers at the house saying I need to take down the flag because of HOA violations. They claim to be from the Willowbrook Community Police Department. Have you ever heard of that agency?" There was a long pause before Sarah responded, and I could practically hear her mental gears turning. "David, there is no Willowbrook Community Police Department. Phoenix PD handles our area, and they wouldn't send officers for HOA disputes anyway. Are you sure these guys are legitimate?" The fake officers were close enough to hear Sarah's voice through the phone, and I watched their expressions change dramatically. The older one's confident facade cracked, while the younger one looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. "Sarah, their uniforms look real, and they've got badges and a patrol car, but something definitely feels off about this whole situation. David, I want you to ask them for their badge numbers and which precinct they're assigned to. Real officers won't hesitate to provide that information, and tell them a U.S. Marshal is en route to verify their credentials." I looked directly at the fake officers and said, "My wife is a U.S. Marshal, and she's on her way here to verify your credentials. She'd also like your badge numbers and precinct assignments." The transformation was immediate and dramatic. The older officer's authoritative demeanor completely evaporated, replaced by visible panic. He glanced nervously at his partner, who was already taking a step backward toward their fake patrol car. "Listen, sir, maybe we got our wires crossed here. This might be more of a civil matter than we initially thought. Perhaps you should work this out directly with your HOA, but I wasn't about to let them walk away that easily. Officers, you came to my door with badges and uniforms, making official statements about ordinance violations. If you're legitimate law enforcement, you should be happy to provide your credentials to a federal marshal." The younger officer finally found his voice, and what he said next confirmed everything I suspected. "Look, man, this whole thing got way out of hand. We were just supposed to scare you into taking down the flag. Nobody said anything about dealing with federal agents." His partner shot him a look that could have melted steel, but the damage was done. The truth was finally out in the open. "So you're admitting you're not real police officers?" The older man was now frantically calculating his exit strategy. "Sir, there seems to be some kind of misunderstanding here. We're going to head back to the station and sort this out with our supervisor." But before they could make their escape, I heard the sound that would change everything. Sarah's unmarked federal vehicle pulling into our driveway. She must have been closer than I thought. because she arrived with the kind of speed that only comes from years of federal law enforcement experience. Sarah emerged from her car wearing her full U.S. Marshal gear, tactical vest, badge prominently displayed, and the unmistakable aura of someone with real federal authority. She was a striking figure, a 38-year-old African-American woman who had worked her way up through the ranks to become one of the most respected marshals in her district. When Sarah walked with purpose, people paid attention. "Gentlemen," she announced in her official marshal voice, "I understand you've been having a conversation with my husband about HOA violations. I'm U.S. Marshal Sarah Mitchell, and I'd like to see some identification." The fake officer's panic reached new levels. The older one was sweating despite the cool October morning, while his younger partner looked like he might actually faint. Their fake patrol car, which had seemed so official minutes earlier, now looked obviously wrong parked next to Sarah's real federal vehicle. Sarah approached them with the confident stride of someone who had arrested actual criminals in genuinely dangerous situations. "Badge numbers, please, and I'll need to see your departmental identification and credentials." The older fake officer made one last desperate attempt to maintain his charade. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we're conducting official police business here and we don't need to justify our actions to anyone." Sarah's response was swift and decisive. She pulled out her federal badge and held it at eye level, making sure both men could see every detail of her official credentials. "This is a federal badge, issued by the United States Department of Justice. I have jurisdiction in this matter, and I'm ordering you to produce your identification immediately." The effect was instantaneous. Both fake officers seemed to deflate like punctured balloons. The younger one actually raised his hands slightly, as if he were surrendering. "Marshal, look, we can explain everything. This whole thing wasn't our idea." Sarah stepped closer, and I could see her switching into full federal agent mode. "Start talking. Who hired you? Where did you get these uniforms? And what exactly were you told to accomplish here?" The older fake officer finally cracked completely. "We're not real cops, okay? We're actors from Phoenix Community Theater. Margaret Thornfield hired us to intimidate residents who weren't following HOA rules. She said it would just be a scare tactic to get people to comply." Sarah's expression shifted from stern to incredulous. "You're telling me that Margaret Thornfield hired actors to impersonate police officers for the purpose of intimidating residents? Do you have any idea how many federal laws you've just broken?" The younger actor was now visibly shaking. "Ma'am, we thought it was just going to be like a prank or something. Margaret said homeowners would be more likely to follow the rules if they thought police were involved. We never meant to commit any real crimes." Sarah pulled out her phone and started making notes. "Impersonating police officers is a felony in Arizona. Add to that conspiracy, intimidation, and possible extortion charges, and you're looking at serious federal time." But then something unexpected happened. Sarah looked at both men carefully, assessing their genuine terror and obvious remorse. The younger actor was clearly just a kid who had gotten in way over his head, and even the older one seemed more stupid than malicious. "Here's what's going to happen," Sarah continued. "You're going to give me Margaret Thornfield's contact information, a complete statement about what she hired you to do, and any documentation or communication you have about this scheme. In exchange, I might be willing to work with the prosecutor on reducing charges, assuming you cooperate fully." The relief on their faces was immediate and obvious. The older actor pulled out his phone and started scrolling through his messages. "We've got all the text conversations with Margaret, the payment receipts, and even the script she gave us to follow." As they handed over the evidence, I started to piece together the full scope of Margaret's elaborate plan. She had researched local theater groups, found actors desperate enough to take on questionable gigs, purchased realistic police uniforms and equipment, and even created fake badges and a patrol car with authentic-looking decals. Sarah examined their phones and documentation with the thoroughness of someone who had built federal cases from similar evidence. "This is extensive premeditation. Margaret didn't just wake up one morning and decide to hire fake police officers. She planned this operation for weeks, maybe months." The younger actor, who introduced himself as Marcus Johnson, seemed eager to cooperate fully. "Marshal Mitchell, Margaret told us she had already tried this with 3 other residents, and it worked perfectly. She said homeowners were so intimidated by the fake police visits that they immediately complied with all HOA demands." This revelation hit me like a physical blow. Margaret hadn't just targeted me. She had been running a systematic campaign of intimidation against multiple residents using fake law enforcement. How many of my neighbors had been terrorized into compliance by this elaborate fraud? Sarah's federal training kicked in immediately. "Marcus, I need you to give me the names and addresses of every resident Margaret told you about. This has gone from a single incident to what appears to be an ongoing criminal enterprise. As Marcus provided the information, I realized the true scope of Margaret's power trip. She had been systematically targeting anyone who challenged her authority, using fake police officers to create fear and compliance throughout the entire community. The older actor, who identified himself as Robert Chen, seemed to understand the gravity of their situation. "Marshal, we know we screwed up badly. We're willing to testify against Margaret and provide whatever evidence you need. We just want to make this right." Sarah nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the attitude that's going to help you when this goes to court. But right now, I need you both to come down to the federal building and give official statements. This investigation is just getting started." As the fake officers prepared to leave with Sarah, I felt a mixture of vindication and amazement. My simple refusal to take down an American flag had uncovered a complex criminal conspiracy that had been terrorizing my neighbors for months. But Margaret Thornfield's story was far from over. As Sarah began her federal investigation, the true extent of the HOA president's crimes would shock everyone in Willowbrook Estates. What started as a flag dispute had become a federal case that would ultimately expose corruption, intimidation, and abuse of power on a scale none of us had imagined. The next morning, I watched from my window as federal agents knocked on Margaret's door. My American flag was still flying proudly in the front yard, exactly where it belonged. Sometimes standing up for your principles leads to consequences you never could have anticipated. In this case, it led to justice being served, and a community being freed from the tyranny of a power-hungry HOA president who thought she was above the law. But this was only the beginning. The federal investigation would uncover financial irregularities, document forgery, and a pattern of abuse that stretched back years. Margaret Thornfield had picked the wrong veteran to intimidate, and definitely the wrong U.S. Marshal's husband to mess with. Justice was coming to Willowbrook Estates, and it was wearing a federal badge.